They say silence can be louder than screams. On a cold February night in 2004, silence was the only thing left behind on Route 112. 21-year-old Maura Murray crashed her Saturn on a desolate stretch of road in Haverhill, New Hampshire. When the police arrived just minutes later, Maura was gone. No footprints into the woods, no blood, no phone activity, just a locked car, an empty road, and the chilling absence of anything else. In our last episode, we explored the exposure theory, the idea that Maura wandered away from the crash, disoriented, and succumbed to the cold. But there's another theory, one that haunts those of us who've worked emergency scenes in the wilderness, one that doesn't end with hypothermia. It ends with headlights pulling away. This episode, we dig into the tandem driver theory. What if Maura didn't leave the scene alone? What if someone was waiting for her, or met her by chance and she got into another vehicle, willingly or not? We'll examine the clues, the search dogs losing their scent exactly 100 yards down the road, the way she declined help from a local bus driver, the contents of her car suggesting intent, not accident. And we'll explore whether Maura, under pressure from recent emotional and legal stressors, might have arranged to meet someone that night, or hitched a ride she never meant to take. I've seen crash victims make strange decisions under stress, but Maura's case isn't just strange, it's surgical. The timing, the silence, the total erasure, it raises the question, was this a spontaneous escape or a handoff into something darker? We'll also pull back and look at the larger failures in rural missing persons cases, how assumptions of voluntary disappearance delay critical hours of investigation, and we'll touch on other communities who've paid the price for similar assumptions. We're not here to sensationalize. We're here to ask what the evidence actually supports. Because while silence leaves space for stories, facts still leave shadows. And on Route 112, the shadow cast by Maura's disappearance is long, cold, and still moving. This is episode 5 of our Maura Murray series, Shadow in the Snow. Could Maura have been left to die? Welcome to Dark Dialogue, the podcast where we unravel the shadows of the human mind and dive deep into the cases that haunt us. I'm your host, John.
And I'm your host, Angela. And alongside John, we're here to explore the stories that keep you up at night. Tales of mystery, betrayal, and the kind of truth that's stranger than fiction.
Each episode, we dive deep into the mysteries that linger, the questions that refuse to fade, and the lives that vanished into silence. We do it all with a commitment to the facts, to empathy, and to the kind of storytelling that gives voice to the voiceless.
Where we cover cases that haunt small towns and big cities alike. So grab your headphones, dim the lights, and join us for a conversation that's as gripping as it is unsettling. This is Dark Dialogue. Let's step into the darkness together.
So, before we touch this one off, Angela, how's it going tonight?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. How's work?
Work is work.
Ready for the weekend?
Oh, yeah. Boss man told me to not get in any trouble this weekend.
Do you intend to follow those orders?
Yes, I told him I was recording with you tonight, and then I'm not leaving my house until Monday unless it hits the fan and I have to.
So nothing big planned for the weekend?
No.
Right on. Perfect.
Nope.
All right, well, you ready to dive into this one?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. So like I said, on February 9th, 2004, Maura Murray's black Saturn crashed along Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Within 19 minutes, she was gone. No blood, no footprints, no confirmed sightings, just a car, a cold road, and a vanishing that would ignite a 2-decade mystery. So let's run over this timeline again. Just after 7:27 p.m., Faith Westman, watching from her window on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, sees a black Saturn angled nose first into a snowbank. The hazard lights are flashing, snow lines the road, a figure is moving around the car, she says. And in one of the most debated details in this case, she also reports seeing a man smoking a cigarette seated in or near the vehicle. By 7:46, Officer Cecil Smith arrives. The car is still there, but Maura is not.
We've walked this timeline before, but this time we're not asking whether Maura wandered into the woods. We're asking whether someone picked her up.
That's the core of the tandem driver theory, and what makes it worth serious consideration isn't just what's missing, but what's present. Let's look closely at that 19-minute window, the setting, the behavior, and the subtle signs that Maura didn't leave alone. So Route 112 is known locally as the Wild Ammonoosuc Road, winds through dense forest and remote corners of Grafton County. In winter, it's even more isolating. There's no shoulder lighting, cell service disappears quickly, the road narrows between high banks, visibility is poor. A car off that road might sit for hours before anyone notices, unless you live along it. Maura's Saturn crashed into a snowbank near a sharp bend east of Swiftwater. The damage was moderate, enough to trigger the airbags, but not enough to disable the vehicle entirely. The car was locked, no signs of a break-in, no visible blood, no footprints leading away from the car in any direction. A trained cadaver dog picked up Maura's scent and tracked it east along the road, about 100 yards before the trail stopped cold. That sudden end isn't consistent with a person wandering into the woods. It's consistent with someone getting into another vehicle.
And with the Westmans saying they saw someone smoking a cigarette, maybe a man, it raises the possibility that Maura wasn't alone before she vanished.
It's a detail that's been debated. Some accounts treat it as a misperception, others as a key clue. But when the evidence is this thin, even contested details matter. So here's what we know. Faith Westman sees a car crash. She reports someone near her inside the vehicle. Then Butch Atwood, the school bus driver, finishes route and pulls up to the Saturn and speaks to Maura directly. She seems calm, not injured, not hysterical. He offers to help. She declines, telling him that she's already called AAA. But there's no cell reception in that area like we've talked about, and AAA has no record of her call. Her phone was never recovered. That wasn't the truth. It was a deflection.
And that's where this theory begins to take shape. She wasn't looking for help. She was trying to avoid it.
Exactly. That calm refusal is one of the most telling behaviors in this case. When you combine it with her packing choices, it starts to look a lot less like someone who panicked and crashed, and a lot more like someone executing a plan. Inside the Saturn, investigators found textbooks, school paperwork, that printed email to her boyfriend, MapQuest directions to Burlington and Bartlett, personal toiletries, makeup, snacks, and prepaid phone cards. It wasn't a rush grab and go. This was curated, prepared. What was missing? Her phone, her wallet, and her backpack. Items that likely went with her when she left the scene. That alone suggests that she didn't wander off into the woods unprepared. She took her essentials, items that you'd need for a night away or for going off the grid for that matter.
And it's not just what she took, it's where she was headed. Those MapQuest directions show routes to areas hours away. She wasn't going for a walk. She was going somewhere.
Right. The most compelling theories point to Vermont as her destination. Burlington, Stowe, Bartlett, all were reachable from the crash site, and Maura knew the area. Her family had vacationed in New Hampshire. She wasn't lost. If the crash was part of a broader escape, then the Saturn may have been a decoy, a way to delay the search and sever the digital trail, but something changed or someone intervened. So let's revisit that 100-yard scent trail. Maura's scent was followed along the road for roughly the length of a football field before it vanished. No scent into the woods, no continuation down the road, just a hard stop, like she stepped into another car. That's a very specific kind of trail to lose. There are seasonal pullouts on that stretch of 112, unmarked, unlit, plowed enough for a vehicle to stop undetected. If Maura arranged a rendezvous with someone, possibly someone she didn't want witnesses interacting with, that would be the ideal pickup spot. Alternatively, if she didn't arrange anything but was instead intercepted by a passing driver, the speed and subtlety of that window makes it entirely plausible.
And if someone was waiting, it explains her turning down Butch Atwood. He wasn't who she was waiting for.
Exactly. The lie about AAA now reads like a tactical move, a brush off. She needed to buy time, whether for a friend en route or something darker. But there's another piece of this that can't be overlooked. When Officer Smith arrived, there was no assumption of criminality. No perimeter was set, no attempt to preserve tire tracks, no forensic search was conducted. The Saturn was towed away quickly, and by the next morning, new snow and plowing erased most signs of what had been there. That failure of early scene management is the most enduring consequence of the "she just ran away" assumption, because if Maura was picked up, voluntarily or not, then every second of that 19-minute gap mattered, and nearly every clue was erased before anyone thought to look.
And that's what breaks your heart, not just the what, but the how. How easily she slipped into the ether because no one thought to treat it as a real disappearance.
And that's silence. Theories thrive, but the tandem driver theory, it's not born of wild speculation. It's born from the holes left by the people who should have filled them. We have a calm young woman declining help, a car packed with travel supplies, a scent trail that ends sharply 100 yards away, a potential second person spotted at the scene, and no footprints, not into the woods, not across the snow, nowhere. All signs point to someone else being involved, someone with a car, and just enough time.
And now we're left to ask why. What made Maura walk away from the only people who tried to help her?
The answer lies in her final days, because no theory is complete without understanding the pressure that she was under. Before we talk about where Maura might have gone, we have to ask, what was happening in her mind the moment she stepped out of that Saturn? Not a day or a week before, but right then, on Route 112, standing in the cold, her car angled oddly off the road, her belongings still inside. What kind of mindset leads someone to reject help, lie about calling for assistance, and vanish without a trace? So let's keep this brief, because we've been over it time and time again. But Maura was facing academic and personal pressures at UMass. She'd been in a recent car accident, and campus disciplinary trouble loomed. On February 9, 2004, she packed her car with clothes, toiletries, and directions to New Hampshire, not to vanish, but to get away. For a weekend, maybe a little longer.
And that's an important distinction here. A getaway isn't a disappearance. It's a pause, a breath.
Right. And I don't know about you, but that's the indication that I get. I mean, we've talked about it, but I think that she was taking a breather. I think she was going to get away for a weekend, maybe a week, and then come up with a plan, how she wanted to move forward, how she was going to deal with these issues, and then come back.
Searching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do I really want to be? Where do I want to go? And how do I start?
Yep. And who knows what that was? Maybe she was like, maybe I don't want to be a nurse. Maybe I need to drop out of college. Maybe, but nothing that I have seen leads me to believe that she was getting ready to run away.
Just disappear forever?
Right.
Yeah.
But whatever she was planning, it was not running away forever. I'm convinced of that.
I believe it too. Yeah.
But the moment her car crashed on Route 112, the plan, whatever it was, changed drastically. Maura refused help from Butch Atwood, the last person confirmed to have seen her. She told him that AAA had been called, which, as we've said, wasn't true. Her voice was calm. She didn't appear distressed. Atwood later said he saw no visible injuries. So here we have a woman in the middle of rural New Hampshire in freezing temperatures, standing beside a wrecked car at twilight, and she declines help calmly. That kind of composure doesn't come from confusion. It comes from decision.
Yeah, you don't lie about AAA unless you're trying to keep someone from calling the cops.
Exactly. The presence of alcohol in the car, some containers partially consumed, may have raised the specter of a DUI in her mind, especially after a prior accident just days earlier. Think about that. One more crash, one more mistake, her academic standing, her future, her family's trust. It may have all felt like it was teetering, and in that moment, Maura's choice wasn't just to lie, it was to delay consequences. She didn't want a scene, she wanted space, time, distance. In high-stress moments, some people freeze, others run. Maura didn't do either. She played for time. That signals a pivot in her mindset from managing a difficult situation to avoiding one entirely. And that decision likely wasn't made on the spot. It had been forming under pressure for weeks. Psychologically, Maura's lie wasn't just a lie. It was a wall, a quick construction of personal space. She wasn't asking for help. She was maintaining control.
But how much control can you really have standing on a snowbank in the dark?
Well, that's the paradox. She had no power over her car, her location, or her timing, but she had power over her narrative, and she used it. We also have to consider the critical detail. Maura left behind all of her packed items, her toiletries, clothes, academic materials, but she took her cell phone, wallet, and backpack. You don't take those things if you're walking off into the woods. You take them when you're planning to continue on to somewhere.
Or when you know you won't be coming back to the car.
So there's two strong possibilities here. Number one, Maura arranged to meet someone, a friend, maybe even someone she trusted. Her behavior, calm, composed, directional, suggests that she was on schedule. The printed directions to Bartlett and Burlington could point to a prearranged rendezvous along Route 112 or beyond. Or two, someone stopped unexpectedly and offered a ride. The man seen smoking a cigarette inside or near her car, which was reported by Faith Westman, could represent that person. Some dispute the sighting, but it lingers in the record for a reason. Whether the ride was planned or seized upon, Maura stepped into a moment of irreversible change.
Because even if she thought she was choosing safety, she may have chosen wrong.
Absolutely. And we need to acknowledge the third possibility, coercion. It's conceivable Maura refused help from Atwood because she was waiting for someone, but not willingly. Maybe someone had already stopped, told her not to talk, not to accept help. That fear could have prompted her lie about AAA. The problem with pressure is it distorts reality. And if someone gave Maura an ultimatum, come with me or this gets worse, maybe she may have obeyed, thinking she'd sort it out later. We also need to shut the door firmly on a popular misconception that Maura orchestrated a permanent vanishing act. There's absolutely no evidence of that. No disappearance plan, no withdrawal of funds, no sign she emptied her accounts or staged her belongings to disappear forever. Everything she packed, her MapQuest directions, her textbooks, even her birth control suggests movement, not abandonment. She was going somewhere, and whatever happened on Route 112 was not her endgame. It was an interruption.
She didn't run off into the woods to start over. She left because she thought she'd still have the chance to return.
Exactly. And that belief, however fragile, is what makes this next part so crucial, because now that we understand her behavior, her decisions, and her mindset, we have to ask, what physical traces did she leave behind? Are there signs she got into another vehicle? Did the road tell the story that Maura couldn't? So let's examine the physical evidence at the scene and what it tells us about the presence of another driver, because understanding what Maura did is only half the mystery. The other half, what someone else did when she was most vulnerable. So let's focus on what remains when the snow settles. Evidence, physical and circumstantial, concrete and implied. In Maura Murray's case, it's what isn't left behind that tells the loudest story. Segment 4 is about that story, the vanishing trail that begins on Route 112 and ends nowhere. No confirmed sightings, no footprints, just a Saturn abandoned, and the growing suspicion that Maura didn't walk away. She was picked up.
Or taken. That's always the caveat, right? This segment hits hard because it lays out the forensic breadcrumbs. And spoiler, they lead us right off the road.
Yeah. So let's start with what we know. The official police logs note that Maura's vehicle was found partially in the road, facing eastbound after reportedly having crashed into a snowbank on Route 112 in Haverhill. At approximately 7:27 on February 9, 2004, there was no one inside. Faith Westman, the neighbor across the street, made the initial 911 call. She described the crash and reported seeing someone, presumably Maura, moving around the car. Her initial description later shifted in retellings. At one point, she claimed to have seen a man smoking a cigarette in the driver's seat. At another, she simply referenced a figure by the car. This inconsistency has become a major point of contention in tandem driver discussions. And it should be. The disputed report of a man smoking in the car, if accurate, would instantly suggest another person at the scene, another presence. But to be clear, it does not confirm the presence of a second vehicle, only the presence of a second person.
And even if that's not accurate, Faith could have misinterpreted shadows or reflections. We still have something else, the scent trail.
Yeah, that's arguably the most striking forensic clue. On February 10th, New Hampshire Fish and Game brought in trained tracking dogs. The lead dog followed a scent from the driver's side of the Saturn, heading east down Route 112 for approximately 100 yards. Then it vanished. Gone. Scent loss like that isn't unheard of, especially in light snow, but it's significant that it ended on the roadway. No scent leading off into the woods, no secondary trail, just a hard stop. That usually happens when someone enters a vehicle. According to canine behavior experts and search and rescue protocols, scent plumes dissipate vertically when a subject enters a car. If Maura had continued walking, particularly in the cold, still air, the scent would likely have carried further. This abrupt cutoff suggests one possibility. She got into another vehicle. We've already talked about all of the stuff that was found in her car, her books, her directions, birth control, all of that stuff.
That's a clear split between what she meant to leave behind and what she took with her. If she had intended to vanish into the woods, she would have likely taken essentials like her birth control, her identification, and possibly extra clothing. If she'd planned a quick departure, one facilitated by someone else, taking only the critical items makes sense. The printed MapQuest directions point to Burlington, not a known location for Maura's family or immediate friends. Some theorize she was en route to Bartlett, New Hampshire, where her family had vacationed, but the directions suggest Burlington may have been a possible destination. Whether that plan changed en route is unknown.
If Maura was trying to meet someone or had arranged for a pickup, this setup makes sense. She was traveling light but prepared for a weekend getaway. Again, not a disappearance, not a crime scene, a pause, a breather. The vehicle showed no signs of a struggle. The driver's side was damaged, but there was no reported blood in the car. There were no signs of injury reported by Butch Atwood. And he claimed that she refused the help, saying that she'd already called AAA, but that she remained calm. No panic, no desperation, just waiting.
I'd have been panicked.
You would have been?
I'm panicked all day long. So anyway, continue.
So investigative failures compound that ambiguity. When police arrived, they treated the scene not as an emergency response to a potentially injured driver or missing person, but as an abandoned vehicle. No perimeter was set, no tire tracks were preserved. Snow plows reportedly came through shortly thereafter, erasing evidence of any additional vehicle that may have been present. The tracking dogs found the scent that they lost 100 yards down the road, and then the cadaver dogs, when they were brought in, found no remains. The latter finding supports the tandem driver theory, especially when combined with the scent trail cutoff. The mechanics of scent dispersion matter here. When someone enters a car, the rising thermal plumes from their body are suddenly trapped and dissipated inside the enclosed space. Outside, cold and wind stabilize the scent's horizontal path. That hard stop with no indication of turning into the woods reinforces the likelihood that she entered a vehicle.
And then there's geography. Route 112 is dark, narrow, and flanked by occasional pullouts, especially near Bradley Hill Road. Unlit and unpaved, these areas would be ideal for someone waiting just out of view. A second vehicle could have stopped without being noticed, especially in the pre-digital age, where surveillance cameras weren't tracking every turn.
Faith Westman's initial description included a figure by the car, possibly a man smoking. Atwood's help was refused. There was no visible footprints leading into the forest, and the weather was cold but not impossible to survive in short term, at least by hypothermia standards like we talked about on the last episode. Mm-hmm. Yet, Maura was never seen again. All signs point to a vanishing act made possible by a second vehicle, a tandem driver. Whether planned or predatory, we can't say, but evidence supports this. She did not just walk away.
And let's not forget what wasn't done. No tire tracks photographed, no footprints documented, no canvas of nearby homes in the crucial early hours. That's not just procedural oversight, that's a gap wide enough for a person to disappear through. And Maura's packed car, the schoolwork, the MapQuest directions, the birth control, it all points to a temporary trip. Like we've said, a pause, just a plan.
We're not saying this proves that she was picked up, but we are saying that, taken together, these pieces form a consistent picture. Maura Murray didn't disappear into thin air. She vanished into something with wheels.
So who was driving? That's next. Was this a planned handoff, a helpful stranger, or something darker?
The clues are cold, but they do speak. A disappeared scent trail, missing belongings, a calm lie told to a stranger. What we're left with is a series of possible stories, potential scenarios that might explain how Maura Murray vanished so quickly, so cleanly from Route 112. It doesn't take speculation, it takes reconstruction. So let's walk through it.
And this isn't just a list of wild guesses. These are the theories grounded in what we know, what Maura packed, how she behaved, and what the scene showed us.
So let's begin with the baseline. Maura was not trying to disappear permanently. That's been explored and dismissed. She packed for a weekend getaway. She brought textbooks, birth control, cash, toiletries, and alcohol. She left behind her classwork and most of her belongings. She didn't clean out her bank account. She made no dramatic goodbyes. She had no history of mental illness that would explain self-harm or deliberate vanishing. Her actions suggest she expected to return. And her demeanor at the crash site matters. Calm, refused help, lied about calling AAA. That behavior suggests one of three things. She didn't want law enforcement involved. She expected someone to come for her, or she was afraid to ask for help. Each of those three conditions lead us to a different scenario. So scenario number 1 is the planned rendezvous. This theory suggests Maura had arranged to meet someone either at or shortly after the crash site, that she was driving in a coordinated location and was perhaps intercepted earlier than expected. Evidence that supports this: the printed MapQuest directions to Burlington, Vermont, a city where she had no close connections but may have chosen as a general region to meet someone. Her wallet, phone, and keys were missing. These are not items you leave behind unless you're leaving with someone. There were no signs of a struggle in the car, no reports of panic or distress. Butch Atwood said that she was composed. And then we have the scent trail that stops 100 yards down the way. Dogs didn't trace her into the woods. The trail doesn't fade. It vanishes. That happens when a person enters a car.
So who could she have planned to meet? A friend, a fellow UMass student, an online contact? Could it have been someone she knew from past summer trips to New Hampshire?
That's where this theory falters. No confirmed communications have surfaced, no emails or calls that clearly identify a rendezvous partner, but it's still possible, especially if the contact was made by her missing cell phone. Then we have scenario 2, the opportunistic pickup. This theory holds that Maura did not plan to meet anyone, but after the crash, someone driving by stopped and offered her a ride. Evidence supporting this scenario: number 1, Maura turned down help from Butch Atwood, someone clearly identifiable and local. And like we've said before, he was in a school bus, which to me was...
suggests trust. Story.
Yeah, right. If she accepted a ride shortly after, it may have been with someone that she perceived as safer, maybe, or more helpful. Possibly a younger person, or possibly a woman. And then number 2, witness reports note no other vehicle stopped in the immediate aftermath, but that window is small. The crash occurred around 7:27 and police arrived shortly after at 7:45. Next, the road was rural, but not untraveled. A car stopping between 7:35 and 7:40 could plausibly have picked her up unnoticed. And then we've got the cigarette smoking man report. Disputed though it is, it implies another person may have been present.
The risk here is huge. Getting into a stranger's car at night in the cold after a crash.
True, but if Maura feared a DUI or had open alcohol in the car, she may have felt desperate, especially knowing that police might arrive at any moment. A car pulling over, offering help, might have seemed like the lesser risk. This theory often splits further into that the pickup was innocent. Someone genuinely gave her a ride and something went wrong later, or the pickup was predatory. Someone saw an opportunity and exploited it. There are no witnesses to confirm either one of them. And then we have scenario 3, the coerced disappearance. This is the darkest theory and the one with the fewest details, but also the most feared. It posits that someone stopped who didn't offer help, but rather forced Maura into their vehicle. Circumstantial support includes the complete lack of physical evidence suggesting voluntary departure, no footprints, no sign of her walking into the woods. And then we have her refusal of help from Atwood, which might suggest that she was waiting for someone else or was already afraid. Then the crash site had unlit pullouts nearby, places where a vehicle could have parked out of sight. And then we have the timing. Only about 10 to 15 minutes passed between her last confirmed sighting and the arrival of police. If someone was watching the scene from a distance, or if they circled back after seeing her car, that's all the time they would have needed. A coercive pickup would leave behind exactly what we see: a car with keys missing, a vanished person, and no signs of a struggle. And then we have scenario 4, the voluntary ride that went wrong. A hybrid of the above. Perhaps Maura accepted a ride, believing she could trust the person, but something unexpected happened afterward. Maybe the driver was initially safe. Maybe they even intended to help, but circumstances shifted. A disagreement, an accident, or something darker.
Like she took a calculated risk and it turned out to be a fatal misjudgment.
It's possible. The lack of evidence doesn't prove intent, just outcome. No recovered remains, no credible sightings, no cell phone activity, no financial activity. A clean break. And remember, Maura didn't leave a note. She didn't erase herself. She just vanished. So let's also address what these theories don't require. They do not require a conspiracy. They do not require Maura being on the run, and they don't require elaborate setups. They require only one thing, and that is a second vehicle. And all evidence suggests one was there. The scent trail, the missing essentials, the absence of prints or direction, all signs point not to a girl who ran into the woods, but to one who left the road.
And the bigger question now, why wasn't this taken seriously from the start?
Yeah, which pisses me off.
And I gotta say, we keep talking about the smoking man, and I keep picturing X-Files.
I've never watched X-Files, so you're going to have to expound on that a little bit.
There's a character called the smoking man.
Oh, really?
And all you see is a silhouette of a man smoking.
That sounds pretty fitting.
Yeah. So I see X-Files every time we talk about the smoking man.
Well, now that you've explained that, I can understand.
You'll see it too.
Yeah. So the minutes after a disappearance are crucial. The hours are defining. The days, often irreversible. In Maura Murray's case, the system didn't just fail her. It didn't show up at all. This segment explores what didn't happen and why that matters just as much as what did.
And it's not just about Maura. These failures, assuming the best, acting too late or not at all, are patterns we've seen in missing person investigations across the country. They don't always fit a demographic, but they do fit a familiar story.
So let's start at the scene. When law enforcement arrived at Maura's crash on Route 112 around 7:46 p.m., they didn't treat it like a possible missing person incident, not even like a car crash that might involve an injured driver. They treated it as an abandoned vehicle. No immediate search, no perimeter, no assumptions that someone might be hurt, lost, or taken. The Saturn was towed shortly after 8:49 p.m. without being processed as a potential crime scene. Officers didn't photograph tire tracks or footprints. Snowplows came through not long after, erasing any potential evidence of a second vehicle. It's not that they missed something, it's that they missed everything. When the clock starts ticking on a disappearance, every minute matters. That clock never started for Maura, and failing to preserve tire tracks may have obscured critical evidence of a second vehicle, one possibly involved in her disappearance. Tracking dogs were finally brought in the next day on February 10th. They followed a scent trail for 100 yards east of the Saturn before it vanished, consistent with someone entering a vehicle. And then the cadaver dogs on February 11th found nothing. If Maura was taken, the critical window to catch her trail had already closed.
And even basic follow-up was sloppy. Witness statements were inconsistent and not rigorously cross-checked. Neighbors weren't canvassed thoroughly in the hours after the crash. Interviews with travelers along Route 112 were limited or delayed, missing potential witnesses.
And let's talk about the paperwork. The accident report listed no injuries. The call log didn't note urgency. Internal documents treated the crash like a property issue, not a possible crime. This bureaucratic lens distanced responders from the human reality of the situation. And that speaks to a deeper issue, assumption bias. Not necessarily based on gender, race, or class, but a tendency to assign benign explanations instead of treating every disappearance as potentially criminal. The assumption, she ran away, she'll turn up, maybe she just needed space, that assumption derailed the urgency needed to pursue leads. The media amplified it, portraying Maura as a troubled young woman under stress. That framing shaped public opinion and police priorities. Instead of seeing vulnerability, they saw motive to disappear. Compare this with high-profile cases where urgency defines the response. Coordinated searches, federal alerts, immediate press conferences. Maura didn't get that. She got delay and doubt. Let's revisit what Maura left behind. Her belongings in the Saturn, schoolwork, toiletries, alcohol, MapQuest directions. Like we've said, that all points to a weekend getaway, not a suicide and not a runaway.
Right? I wouldn't take that to a suicide.
No. She packed for a short trip, not a permanent one. But with no phone, no wallet, and no keys found, it's clear that she took the essentials, whatever she could carry. That suggests a departure on foot or by vehicle, not a random disappearance. Combine that with the scent trail cutoff and lack of preserved tire tracks, and the possibility of a second vehicle becomes harder to ignore. And yet, the response never escalated. No BOLOs or be on the lookout alerts, no multi-agency coordination, no push for federal involvement. It was treated as local and low priority.
Which makes you wonder, if this had been treated with the seriousness of a potential abduction, preserving the scene, securing the perimeter, canvassing immediately, how different might this investigation have looked?
Yeah, no kidding. And how many other cases echo that silence? We've reviewed dozens. The patterns repeat: delayed response, lost evidence, case closed on assumption. In Maura's case, it's not just about what was missed in the first 48 hours. It's about what was never done at all. The timeline police reconstructed was incomplete and left out critical moments. No comprehensive search of the woods surrounding the area, no thorough interviews with drivers who may have passed through Route 112 during that time frame, no forensic preservation of the Saturn.
And so Maura's family, like so many others, became investigators themselves. They knocked on doors, tracked rumors, created websites, begged for media attention. That shouldn't be the family's job.
That is the job of law enforcement. They're supposed to treat every disappearance as potentially criminal until it's proven otherwise. Maura did not get that, and the result is a 2-decade mystery with more questions than answers. When someone vanishes without a trace, one of the first investigative questions is whether they left with someone they trusted. In Maura Murray's case, the idea that she coordinated a rendezvous with a friend, someone from her past or her present, isn't just plausible. It may be the most straightforward explanation that we have.
And that would explain a lot. The packed car, the calm demeanor, the refusal of help. It suggests Maura wasn't panicking. She was waiting, not for rescue, but for a ride.
So let's start with what Maura took. Her schoolwork, her toiletries, and enough alcohol for the weekend. A MapQuest directions to the Burlington area. These aren't the belongings of someone vanishing without a trace on purpose. They're the signs of a temporary trip. And critically, she took no cold weather gear, no hiking equipment. She wasn't planning to wander into the woods. Maura packed for a getaway, not an escape. That distinction matters. Everything in the Saturn pointed to a short trip, not a life abandoned. And if she was headed to a destination, she was likely meeting someone to complete that journey. Now, the friend as driver theory hinges on a few things. Number one, Maura trusted the person enough not to notify family or friends. 2, she had prearranged the meeting or expected them along the way. And 3, the person had a reason to stay silent after she vanished. There's no confirmed name, no smoking gun, but several circumstantial details support this scenario. Take the scent trail. Tracking dogs followed Maura's trail those 100 yards and then it vanished. That strongly implies a vehicle pickup, and the lack of footprints beyond that point really reinforces it.
Plus, she had her essentials with her. Her phone, wallet, and keys were all missing from the car. That suggests she didn't leave in a rush. She left with what she needed.
And remember Butch Atwood's account. Maura was calm. She said she'd already called AAA. That wasn't true, we know, but it sounds like a cover story. Something that you'd say when you're expecting help from somewhere else. It supports the idea that someone was en route. Let's look at who this friend might have been. From UMass, several classmates and nursing peers had been discussed. Maura kept her circle tight, but not impenetrable. A friend with a car, familiar with northern New England, and able to meet her near Woodsville would fit the profile. Alternatively, Maura had connections in Hanson and Amherst, people from her hometown or previous social circles who might have reconnected via phone or email, a trusted male friend, a female confidant, possibly someone older who could provide a safe place to stay.
There's even a theory that the disputed cigarette-smoking man seen near the Saturn could have been the friend. Someone she let into the car or who arrived shortly after the crash. If that sighting was real, it could be a major clue.
Exactly. The sighting is debated, but it matches the timeline. And if someone was already nearby when Maura crashed, it means she wasn't improvising. She was executing a plan. But here's the troubling part. If it was a friend, why didn't they come forward? Or if they did, why didn't their account become part of the public record?
Maybe they were afraid. Afraid they'd be blamed. Maybe something went wrong later. Maybe Maura changed her mind and they panicked. Or maybe, worst case scenario, this friend wasn't who she thought they were.
There are dozens of cold cases where the last person seen with the victim was someone they knew, a friend, a date, a coworker. And in many of those cases, the friend had no prior record, no red flags. Trust is dangerous that way. It makes people overlook risk. You know, there's that story about this young girl. I think she just turned 18. She was just graduated, and her friend that had grown up with her next door, they were like best friends. They spent all their time together, and he just decided that he wanted to kill somebody. So he just strangled her and disposed of the body. They'd been friends since they were little kids.
Right.
I mean, it's freaking crazy, but this kind of shit does happen.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's recap the key supporting points for this theory. Maura packed for a short trip, not a permanent disappearance. Her scent trail ended 100 yards from the car. Missing essentials imply that she left with purpose. No signs of a struggle or panic, and the calm interaction with Atwood suggests confidence in her plan.
And the friend scenario aligns with Maura's personality. She was smart, cautious, not likely to hitch a ride with a stranger in the dark. If she got into another vehicle, it was probably someone she trusted.
But that trust could have been misplaced or simply undocumented. Either way, it's one of the most viable explanations for what happened that night. If Maura met up with a friend, that person holds the key. Whether they meant to harm her, panicked after something went wrong, or simply stayed silent out of fear, they may be the last person to see her alive. If Maura didn't disappear on foot, and if a friend didn't pick her up, we're left with a chilling possibility, and that is a stranger. Someone who happened upon the scene, someone who may have offered help or took advantage of her vulnerability.
And at that moment, Maura was vulnerable, cold, alone, her car undrivable, no phone, no purse, no guaranteed help coming. The opportunity for a predator right there on the right side of Route 112.
Let's look at what we know. The tracking dogs that lost her scent. That suggests she either got into a vehicle willingly or was forced, but the scent didn't go far, and the dogs didn't indicate a struggle. That raises the unsettling question: did someone pull up, speak calmly, and convince her to get in? No one reported seeing another vehicle leave the scene, but it was dark. The road was rural, visibility was poor. If a driver had pulled into one of the unlit pullouts nearby, they might have been completely hidden from view. It wouldn't have taken long. A short exchange, a door opens, and Maura disappears.
And the timeline leaves a gap wide enough to hide an entire scenario. Between the last confirmed sighting and the arrival of law enforcement, there were enough minutes unaccounted for, enough time for a stranger to come and go.
There's also that infamous report from Faith Westman, a man possibly seen smoking in the Saturn's passenger seat. Like we've said, the report is disputed, and Faith wasn't sure. It was dark, and she was looking from a distance, but if true, that introduces another person at the scene, possibly already in the car. That's one version of the stranger scenario. A driver picks her up post-crash, but another possibility? That Maura had already encountered this person before the crash. Maybe she had accepted a ride earlier and something happened en route that led to her car being staged or abandoned. That's a darker, more complex theory, but it's one that we can't just rule out.
Especially when you consider the possibility of someone posing as helpful. Someone who saw a lone woman on the side of the road as a target. Maybe they didn't force her. Maybe they offered a warm car, a phone, a ride into town, and she just said yes.
That's the danger here. Nothing about the Saturn scene indicated a fight or an abduction. No broken glass, no blood, no signs of a scuffle. That might point to a calm interaction, a decision made under stress. And if that's what happened, we're dealing with someone who knows how to appear safe, how to blend in, maybe even how to make someone trust them, if only for a few minutes. Let's take this a step further. What kind of person would do this? A local? Someone passing through? There are multiple scenarios. So the first one is a local predator, someone familiar with the area. They knew the pullouts, the timing, and the traffic patterns. They could have returned home within minutes. No witnesses, no evidence. And then we have the opportunist, a traveler, maybe heading through the area for work or delivery. They saw Maura, they stopped, made contact, and left no trace. And then number 3, we have a predatory stranger, Israel Keys, stumbling along, somebody like that,
Gives me chills.
Someone who planned to target a lone traveler. Maybe this wasn't random. Maybe it was someone who lingered in that area, waiting for just such an opportunity.
Each version has different implications. If it was a local, they might still be in the area. If it was a traveler, they're long gone. If it was a predator, this might not have been their only victim.
Exactly. And without early preservation of the scene, we've lost any hope of figuring that out. No tire track photos, no forensic samples from the road or the snow. If a stranger was involved, they slipped away into silence. There's also the issue of police focus. Early on, the idea of Maura getting into a stranger's car wasn't treated as a primary theory. It really wasn't treated as a theory at all.
Yeah.
They leaned on the idea that she ran away. She was stressed that she didn't come back. But the evidence, or the lack of it, just doesn't support that. What it does support is a disappearance with little trace, a clean exit, no sign of violence, but also no sign of survival.
Which is part of what makes this theory so terrifying. If someone harmed Maura, they may have done it with a precision, with calm, without any red flags.
And they may have been practiced, confident, maybe even experienced. That's what serial offenders look like in their early cases: controlled, quiet, unnoticed. The fact that no substantial leads emerged from the area could mean one of two things. Either this was a one-off by someone passing through, or it was someone so close, so embedded that nobody suspected a thing. And there's another issue. No bolos or be on the lookout alerts, no roadblocks, no immediate push to identify passing vehicles. If a stranger did pick her up, they weren't stopped. They weren't tracked. The clock just started too late.
So we're left asking, how many times has this happened before? How many times has a lone woman on a rural road vanished into a stranger's car? Never to be seen again.
Yeah, it's crazy because we've talked about this before, but I'm looking up here at the wall where we have pictures of just people in Wyoming. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them up there.
Yeah.
Not all women, but it's a collection of men and women who basically vanished exactly the same way, with the exception of the one who was on a mountain bike. All the rest of them up there vanished. Their cars were left behind.
Mm-hmm.
None of their cars were wrecked. One of their cars was stuck.
Scent trail from dogs just stops. They couldn't be found. No trace. They're completely gone. Only one of them up there has been found, and that was just, 3 months ago that they found her? Or a little bit more, but yeah.
Just very recently.
Yeah.
After we started looking into the case.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's like we could just tell this same story about any one of the people that are up there on that board.
Different names.
And just drop different names. I take that back. One of them disappeared from a Walmart. All the rest of them, though, their cars were found, both men and women.
Right.
But to your point, how often has this happened before? I think it happens frighteningly often. It's pretty freaking creepy to think about the number of people that have car problems or whatever, pull over on the side of the road for whatever reason, and are never seen again.
Exactly.
And this would have been the same story for Lisa Marie Kimmel had that case never been solved, and her body was found. But, and another one that isn't up on the board up there, but one that we're researching is Amy Robechtel.
Mm-hmm.
We know that she went running, but it's almost an identical story. Her vehicle was found, no trace of her. She's never been seen again.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm talking about just Wyoming cases, the least populated state in the nation.
Oh,
you think about...
There's way too many of them.
Yes, in this tiny little freaking state with, 500,000 people in the whole damn thing. I mean, we start talking about New Hampshire and Maine and Massachusetts. And and you go to these larger, like New York, California, Texas. I mean, it is sad to say it's a very, very common tale.
Yeah.
And, when you stop and think about it, that's really one of the places where you are probably the most vulnerable that you'll ever be in your life.
Right.
When your car breaks down on a stretch of road, especially when you're far from home, when your car breaks down, you are at the mercy of whoever happens to come by.
Even if you know what you're doing to fix it, it's still...
I've been in the situation,
creepy.
And I've been in the situation several times, and luckily, I've had people that have pulled over and helped me and stuff like that. But it does remind me of a time when, gosh, it was years ago, but I couldn't have been more than maybe 18 years old or something like that. But my truck broke down.
So like 100 years ago?
A little over 100. And my truck broke down, and this young girl, and it was like, gosh, it was late. It was like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And this young girl pulled over and offered me a ride. And so I was like, yeah, that'd be freaking awesome. Thank you. And so I jump in, and, we're driving, and I told her, this is how you get to my place. And we're driving along. She's like, you're not gonna, what did she say? You're not going to rape me, beat me, kill me, and leave me in the bush, are you?
Should have asked that before I got in the car.
Yeah, I'm like, doing everything I can possibly do to let her know, like, no, I'm not a threat. Like, I'm sitting here, hands in my lap, twiddling my thumbs. But I thought, she probably was just acting on instinct. Someone needs help. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to pull over and help them. And then she gets this dude, this random strange guy in the car. And I'm a pretty big guy. All of
a sudden you're like,
And then she's like, wow, this was dumb. And I mean, I'm really grateful for her help.
Yeah.
But as a dad now,
you're like telling your daughters, don't you
ever do this.
You go somewhere, you tell them so-and-so is here, needs help.
Yeah. But, I think about that all the time. And then when she dropped me off, I tried to give her some money and she wouldn't take it. So I ended up throwing like $50 into the truck and slamming the door so she couldn't, because I was so grateful that she helped me. And then the fact that she was like terrified through the whole thing even made me feel all the worse. And so I was like, oh no, this is going to be worth your while, period. And that was back when like $50 was a lot of freaking money to me because first of all, it was a little over 100 years ago. And so, $50 went a lot further, 100 and some years ago. And then the second part of that too is that, I was young. I was like 18 and was making like, I don't know, $5 an hour or $6 an hour or something like that, back when that was normal. But still $50 was a lot of damn money. But I was like, man, this poor girl.
Yeah. I'm going to alleviate your scare right now.
Exactly.
People who hurt you don't generally pay you first.
And also because she was really cute and I was just hoping that she'd like come back.
Aww.
It never happened. So wherever she is, though, thank you for that ride.
And he, to this day, has not hurt anyone. He's still safe.
No, still safe.
He is an electrician, though, so now I'm looking at him a little differently.
Yeah, I know. But, to my point, you're really just at the mercy of whoever stumbles on you. It's a really scary situation, especially for like a young lady, because let's face it, men are just, first of all, we're not targets. I mean, I'll give you that. We've got 4 men, 4 of the 7 on the board are
the
big.
Ratio.
So, but the fact of the matter is when you've got a Ted Bundy or, name any of them pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
They're not pulling over to rape and murder a dude. There are them out there, but the vast majority of them.
Gacy and Dahmer.
Yeah, Gacy, Dahmer. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're probably not pulling over to try to rape a dude my size. But, it's rare, but it does happen. None of us are safe. Yeah. But my point is, when you're a small woman, you're even more vulnerable than a big guy is, And so, I don't know. I kind of got off on this train. I don't even know really where I started or why, but...
It's an after-school special now.
It is an after-school special now. Yeah, but, I don't know what the advice is because it is really a tough situation. You're broke down on the side of the road. Yeah. Do you stay there in the cold? I think in Maura's situation, I don't know for sure what happened, but I think she would have been better off walking to a house than getting into a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that that's probably good advice. Knowing that really the best advice for Maura would have been tell Butch, call the cops, sit with your car and wait for them to get there. They're only going to be a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And, take your lumps. You get a DUI, you get a DUI.
Yeah.
That's just how it works when you drive drunk or drink and drive. We don't know if she was drunk, but I mean, that's the reality.
Disappearing is worse.
Disappearing is way worse than a DUI. Yeah. So
get that straight right now.
But 2 decades on, the question isn't just what happened to Maura Murray. It's also what she left behind. Not in her Saturn, not on Route 112, but in the people who refused to let her story disappear. Her case changed how we think about missing persons. It challenged assumptions, ignited online advocacy, and forced institutions to reconsider how they respond when someone vanishes.
Her name became a rallying cry, even if we didn't know her fate. What started as one young woman vanishing on a snowy New Hampshire road became a movement, a push for accountability, visibility, and change.
The immediate response to Maura's disappearance may have been slow, but her family's efforts were relentless. Fred Murray did not accept the official silence. He put up flyers, contacted media outlets, and demanded answers from authorities who had largely moved on. That pressure made it harder to ignore Maura's case, and it laid the groundwork for a growing wave of citizen-led investigations. And those citizen efforts weren't just symbolic. They created timelines, built maps, compiled witness statements. As early as 2005, online forums like WebSleuths and Maura-dedicated message boards began dissecting the case in granular detail. By 2010, Maura's name was among the first to dominate the then-emerging true crime podcast space. Her case became a template for digital sleuthing. Reddit threads, YouTube documentaries, blogs, even full-length investigative podcasts devoted entire seasons, or like in the case of the Missing Maura Murray podcast, I mean, they have since moved on and they covered like Brianna Maitland's case in extreme detail as well, but their whole podcast was built on this Maura Murray case. And that kept the case in the public eye, and it did pressure law enforcement to keep it active, even if no major leads ever surfaced.
And eventually, it did lead to something. In 2021, the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit officially reopened Maura's case, citing public pressure as one of the driving forces. It wasn't new evidence, it was new momentum. That wouldn't have happened without Fred Murray or the thousands of people who refused to let her become a statistic.
And Maura's impact went beyond one case file. After 2004, New Hampshire reviewed and quietly reformed parts of its missing persons response protocol. Search and rescue operations began incorporating faster deployment guidelines, particularly for adults who went missing under suspicious or uncharacteristic circumstances. Canine units were better integrated into the first 24-hour window. It wasn't sweeping legislation, but it was a shift, a silent acknowledgement that the system could do better. Maura's case also highlighted jurisdictional gaps, how state police, local departments, and volunteer groups weren't always aligned. Coordination improved in some rural departments after 2004, including new training around handling ambiguous disappearances where no crime was initially suspected.
Even the media learned something. Coverage of missing persons, especially young women, grew more nuanced after Maura. Journalists began questioning the assumptions in early reports. The idea that someone just ran off became harder to justify in a headline.
Her case also exposed the limitations of digital advocacy. Not everything online helped. Theories ran wild. Accusations flew. It taught future digital sleuths and responsible creators that being loud doesn't mean being right. That lesson would shape how other cases were covered in the years to come. Still, the net impact was clear. Maura's disappearance changed the ecosystem around missing persons cases. She became more than a photograph on a flyer. She became a symbol of how easily someone can slip through the cracks and how much it takes to pull them back into focus.
And even now, people are still looking, still hoping, still sharing her name. That kind of legacy is rare, but it matters.
Her story forced people to ask harder questions about law enforcement, about media, about themselves, and whether she was taken, lured, or left that road by choice, her absence has left a mark that no snowfall could ever cover. So every case has a theory that becomes the center of gravity, a force that pulls public perception, media framing, and even investigative strategy towards it. In Maura Murray's case, that center has shifted over the years, from emotional instability to staged disappearance, from hypothermia to abduction. But as we've examined throughout this episode, one theory continues to echo with unsettling consistency, and that is the tandem driver.
And it isn't just that the theory is popular, it's that it fits. It explains the scent trail that stops at 100 yards. It explains why Maura took her essentials but left behind what she didn't need for the weekend. And it explains the near total absence of forensic evidence at the scene.
So let's lay out the possibilities. First, the exposure theory, that Maura wandered into the woods, disoriented, and succumbed to the elements. This theory has been endorsed in part by official channels, especially early in the investigation. But as we noted back in the last episode, this theory falls short on several fronts. No footprints leading away from the crash site, no remains found despite extensive searches, including ground team scent dogs and aerial surveillance, and no sign of her clothing, which would likely have been shed during the final stages of hypothermia. This is a theory built on silence, not on evidence. The second theory is that of a voluntary disappearance, that Maura staged the crash to escape her life and start over. This is the favorite of internet skeptics and some segments in law enforcement. But here's the thing. You don't start a new life without your passport, without significant money, and without telling a single person. You don't withdraw just $280, pack your textbooks and toothpaste, and vanish into a blizzard. That is not escape. That's a weekend. The third possibility is that Maura was picked up by a stranger, someone who happened along Route 112 and either offered help or forced her into a vehicle. This theory aligns with the lack of a scent trail, the missing essentials, and her reported calmness when last seen.
Could a stranger have pulled over, offered help, and gained Maura's trust? Or simply taken her by force? The fact that her scent disappears at the edge of the road is telling. She didn't walk away. She left in a vehicle. The only question is, whose? Which brings us to the fourth and most plausible theory, the tandem driver. That Maura was planning a short getaway and arranged to meet someone who would pick her up. That person could have been a friend, a classmate, someone she trusted enough to meet in an unfamiliar place.
And you know, I gotta be honest with you, the more I dig into this for these episodes, the more I kind of began to come to, what about a previous love interest?
Mm-hmm.
It's very common. It's very common when anybody of any age, but especially a young person, is in a relationship and that relationship isn't maybe doing the very best. There was some insinuations of cheating on both sides, both Bill and Maura, and it would not be at all crazy that she reached out to someone,
a former flame,
or someone who had displayed interest in her, even at college.
Yeah.
And she had rebuffed them, but now this relationship is falling apart.
Where it'll go. Let's
just see what happens. Or, oh my gosh, I should have never broke up with him. He was my long lost love. I mean, This is, I'm not just making shit up. This is a very common tale. And so I've kind of been wondering about that, because if the tandem driver is real and she arranged for somebody to travel with her, then that person hasn't spoken, which means they're guilty of something. Because anybody that didn't do something would have come out by now. And we've already discussed my thoughts on like her friends and shit. Like, come on. Yeah, you might help your buddy run away from home when you're 12, but by the time you're 40, you're like, yeah, that was dumb, and I helped him run. Yeah, I mean, you're talking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, if
you're earlier than 40, but still.
Right, but it's what I'm saying is, you know, when you're a kid, you do dumb shit. When you're in college, you're like, absolutely, I understand. I'll keep your secret forever. But you know, I alluded to this, I think, in episode 2, where I was like, yeah, that's all fine and good when you're in college, but when you're a parent yourself and you're 20 years past that, that shit changes. It goes out the window. I can't believe that it was a situation like that.
Yeah.
If it was someone she knew, then I think that is the person that harmed her. And that's why they've never talked. So, but this theory accounts for her demeanor, which was calm, no panic, and it also accounts for what she packed. Nothing permanent. Just a change of clothes, schoolwork, and toiletries. But it also accounts for why she was in that area to begin with a prearranged rendezvous gone wrong. There's a variant of this story worth noting, that the rendezvous was real, but something changed. Maybe the friend didn't show. Maybe Maura waited and a stranger arrived instead. In that scenario, Maura could have gotten into the wrong vehicle, thinking it was the right one.
That's the scenario that haunts people. Not just that she vanished, but that she was left waiting and someone else took advantage. So let's compare these theories side by side. Exposure. No forensic evidence, no remains, no signs of hypothermic behavior like disrobing, very low plausibility. This feels weird for me to be saying these things. Voluntary disappearance, contradicted by the packed items, limited cash, lack of forward planning, low plausibility. Then stranger abduction, consistent with scent trail loss and essential items missing, medium to high plausibility. And finally, tandem driver. This explains Maura's behavior, packed items, and the timeline. High plausibility, especially if the driver was a known contact.
Every piece of evidence that exists, and every piece that doesn't, points away from the idea that Maura simply wandered off. The most likely scenario is that she left the crash site voluntarily, expecting to go somewhere safe, and that trust was betrayed. And while we don't have hard proof of who picked her up, we do know that the window for that pickup was extremely narrow. She was seen by Butch Atwood shortly after the crash. He drove down the road and watched, and she disappeared.
Yeah.
So
super fast orchestration.
Super fast. I mean, we're talking like definitely less than 10 minutes. And, you know, like I said before, I think it's as short as maybe 5.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's insane.
Okay, so if someone was already nearby, waiting in a second car, maybe even following her, that window does make sense. This wasn't random. This wasn't chance.
Yeah, the tandem driver theory isn't just a theory. It's the lens through which all of the other theories fall apart.
And it demands a new set of questions. Who was Maura meeting? Who knew her route? Who gained her trust? And where did that road lead?
In the next segment, we'll look at some other cases where someone disappeared under similar circumstances, because Maura's story isn't just about one road, one night, or one decision. It's about the patterns that continue in other cold cases across the country. So we've spent this episode examining the details of Maura Murray's disappearance, but sometimes the best way to understand a case is by stepping back and looking for patterns, because Maura isn't alone. Across New England and the Northeast, other cases mirror hers in eerie, frustrating ways.
One of the most often compared cases is that of Brianna Maitland. Disappeared in 2004, just over a month after Maura, about 90 miles away in Montgomery, Vermont. Same age range, same rural isolation, same frustrating lack of evidence.
Brianna was last seen leaving work at the Black Lantern Inn around 11:20 p.m. Her car was found the next morning, backed into an abandoned barn. Driver's side door open, belongings inside, but Brianna was gone. No signs of a struggle, no confirmed sightings, and for years, no credible leads.
Her car, like Maura's, became the focus of early investigation. And like Maura's Saturn, it was treated more as a mechanical problem than a potential crime scene. The location was compromised, evidence lost to time and weather.
And this one is even worse. And we're going to dive into Brianna's case just simply because there's a lot of theories out there that the two cases are connected. So we have to examine that. But
we're already in the area.
Right. We're already in the area. But, you know, what's really freaking frustrating to me with both of these cases, but Brianna's is even worse because her freaking car was in a building and
it's just mechanical problems.
Yeah. And I mean, there were signs of a struggle around her vehicle. So the idea that the cops treated it pretty much the same way, it's just bullshit, man. It's just bullshit.
It wasn't the same cops, was it?
No.
Like 90 miles away, but still around here.
I mean, it was a totally different state, so it was different cops, but this is, and it continues to be, a huge issue. I mean, again, when we're looking at the wall and we're talking about cases that have happened not that long ago.
Right.
But the response is very similar.
Yeah.
Oh, they likely ran off.
They're an adult. They're allowed to disappear if they want to.
Right. You can decide to go missing if you want to. Okay. But what if you don't decide?
Yeah. Can we find them and ask them if they decided first and then move on?
That really needs to become the priority.
Yes.
I understand both sides of the argument. I do.
Yeah.
But the priority needs to be we locate every missing person and confirm.
Yeah. And if they want to disappear, then we let them disappear.
Right. I mean, they really need to design some sort of reporting program. And I know this might sound insane, but if you're thinking about going missing and you can just make a report to the sheriff's department, and
like I just started new life.
There is a law that says law enforcement is not allowed to disclose this information to your friends, your family, or nothing. Is all they can do is say, we've received a report. That's it. The family knows they're alive, and that's a personal issue between the family and that person at that point.
Definitely.
And so, but at least then it would give a means for somebody. I'm not saying everybody would utilize it, but it would give a means by which somebody could just be like, you know what, I'm out and I'm going to file this freaking report.
And families would still hurt, but I would imagine a tad less.
I would think a lot less.
I mean, I was trying not to give too much credence because you'd still be like, where are they? Why did they go? Why start over? What have we done wrong? There'd be all those questions. But then there would at least be the possibility that they'll figure it out and come back. And we know, and we're not exhausting man hours and money to look for this person who wanted to just step away when we could be looking for the people who didn't want to step away.
I agree 100%. And the reality of it is the number of those families would be very few, because the fact of the matter is most of the families would be like, oh yeah, because there's a reason that person wants to disappear from their family. It's not usually because they're a good, loving, supportive family. The good, loving, supporting families are the ones that are stuck like the Murrays in this deal where they're like, my daughter would not do this. The families of the people that would actually file that report would be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've been abusing her since she was 3, so it makes sense that she'd want to disappear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, those are the kind of people that want to disappear and start a new life. It's not people that are coming from loving, supporting households.
Exactly.
So it would be a very small number, but at least it would be something, because I believe the number is very small of the number of people that just disappear. Does it happen? Absolutely it happens. We know it happens. But I don't believe it's the majority. I think it's the minority by far.
So we need to create something in the realm of the safe haven law?
Yeah, exactly what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, even if you just left a note in a box at the police station.
I think you'd have to have a way to confirm that it was actually that person,
Oh, yeah.
the murderer. It was like,
okay, yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it quite that, because I'm not a murderer.
Saying I am?
No, you are an electrician.
But, I think that there would have to be a way, you would have to confirm identity. They would have to go in and actually file this report. But as long as it was by law, it has to be confidential, and they cannot disclose any information.
And they can't come after you, just let you go find yourself. Because more often than not, if it's a good family and you just need to find yourself, they'll come back.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And honestly, the number is pretty small.
Yeah.
Because even if they're like all wrapped up in drugs and shit like that, their family is their fallback. And there are story after story after story of men and women that are really bad into drugs and stuff and disappear for long periods of time, but then they pop back up.
Yeah.
And
sometimes they don't even know they were gone. Because they were so far into drugs.
Yeah, or, they just pop back up and they're like, man, I'm a mess. My life's a mess. And, mom and dad wash them up, clean them up, get them new clothes, get their bellies full of food. And then oftentimes they do it all over again. They go back to the streets. They go back to that life. But my point is, they touch base with mom and dad. If they're coming from
or siblings,
a loving, supporting family. Yeah. Right. So I think the number that would utilize that system is relatively small. The number of people that really want to go missing.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that that's a very big number.
But I'm with you. I think that's something that we should look into.
I think that it should exist.
How do we make that exist?
Because yes, adults have the right to go missing 100%, but if there's a procedure that they can follow to do it in a way that nobody's looking for them and nobody's freaking out, most people are going to do that.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be like, I don't want to have to worry about this shit.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be looking over my shoulder all the time thinking somebody's coming looking for me. So just make the report, and then the sheriff or whoever it could be like, yes, we've received a report. That's all they're allowed to say, or, whatever that verbiage looks like. But yes, this person disappeared voluntarily. We've confirmed that.
Yeah.
And that's it. Because that's what happens now. If a sheriff's department or law enforcement, whatever, goes and looks for an adult that is missing and they find them and that person's like, yeah, I left, I wanted to leave, then is all the law enforcement can do is just go back and say
they've been located
and they don't want to come home. That's it.
Yeah.
So
and they don't have to come.
Why not just take out the whole looking step?
Yeah.
Even if it reduced the number of these cases by a small percent, that's still huge across the nation.
It's huge for resources. It's huge for time.
Absolutely.
And most of those people, I believe in my heart, would want those resources on other people and not them.
I think so too. Because if you want to disappear, you don't want people looking for you.
Yeah. And you don't want them wasting time on when they could be looking for a little kid who really needs it.
Right.
So anyway, that's my part.
Yeah.
We've derailed. What are we?
Yeah, we've solved all the world's problems.
We're done.
But we're talking about the Brianna Maitland case and Maura Murray's, and the similarities are pretty freaking chilling. They're both young women in isolated areas, late at night. Their vehicles left under strange circumstances, and in both cases, like we said, law enforcement response was slow, fragmented, and hampered by assumption bias. Maura was labeled a runaway. Brianna was suggested to have left voluntarily, but here's the difference. Brianna had been assaulted before her disappearance, and she told friends that she didn't feel safe. That detail should have triggered a heightened concern. Instead, it was brushed off.
There were rumors, drugs, bad crowds, maybe even trafficking. But like Maura, those rumors were louder than the facts. And in both cases, the media ran with the noise instead of asking why these women vanished under such controlled circumstances.
And, we'll be talking about it, but in Brianna's case, it is a little different than Maura's in that she was involved in drugs.
Sorry, I just tried to choke myself.
That's all right. You all right over there?
Yep. I'm just learning how to breathe again.
But
goodness sake.
So she was involved with drugs. We know that. Her friends have said that. Now, the cops treat her like...
Or Brianna wasn't.
Brianna was involved in drugs.
She was involved.
Was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear when I was like trying to die.
Oh, no, that's fine. So yeah, Brianna was involved in the drug scene. Okay. Absolutely. She strikes me as a kid that was kind of in that experimental phase. Right. She was not like a freaking drug kingpin or a junkie strung out on the street corner somewhere. But there was some drug involvement.
Okay. I follow.
She was a bit of a rebellious kind of a teenage girl. So in that sense, she does stray from Maura just a little bit, but shortly before her disappearance, another girl beat the piss out of her at a party. I mean, beat the shit out of her.
Do we know why?
It was a boy thing.
Oh, it's always a boy thing.
And Brianna was so easygoing that she could have kicked the shit out of this girl because she was like, I don't know, some color belt and some kind of jujitsu or something. She's kind of a badass. And she refused to even raise a hand to defend herself. So, but I mean, we're definitely getting off subject because we'll be covering that, but it's just remarkable how these cops show up on the scene, decide within 37 seconds what happened and walk away and somehow can sleep at night after this shit.
They don't why is the car crashed into a barn?
I mean, it pisses me off because I guess because I'm a dad, I don't know, but I mean, if there's an 18, 19, 20-year-old girl that disappears for any reason, I want to know why and I want to get them help.
Yeah.
Like if it's a drug thing, fine, but we need to get this person found and hopefully get them into some kind of a treatment center or something. Like this idea that you can just be like, some stupid Jeffrey, whatever, and you just go home and sleep at night. It seriously pisses me the hell off.
How long have we been recording?
A while.
Because you have not said...
Pissed off?
No.
It took me a while to get worked up.
No, that's what I'm saying. You have not called anyone an asshat yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. I'm shocked.
Wait for it.
Right.
So what the system missed is not just procedural, it's cultural. A belief that young women sometimes just leave, that they run off, that they cause their own crises. And that belief shapes how agencies prioritize their cases. Take the basics. Were perimeters secured? No. Were early interviews comprehensive? Rarely. Was evidence cataloged immediately? Usually not. These aren't just oversights, they're institutional patterns.
And those patterns extend beyond Vermont and New Hampshire. They show up in cases like Lauren Spearer in Indiana, Sage Smith in Virginia, and Paige Johnson in Kentucky. Each time a young woman disappears under unusual circumstances, each time there's a delay, each time families are left to lead the charge.
It speaks to a national blind spot, a systemic inability to respond with urgency unless the victim fits a very narrow profile or the circumstances scream foul play. But in Maura's case, like Brianna's, the signs were there. They just weren't seen. There's another shared thread, the role of amateur investigators. In Maura's case, online sleuths documented timelines, analyzed maps, chased leads. In Brianna's, locals held searches, chased down rumors, and raised awareness. And I will say, there's a couple of private investigators in Brianna's case that are freaking impressive as hell, and they've done piles more of investigative work than the actual law enforcement has done in this case. But in both, the public has refused to let their cases go.
And that pressure has sometimes worked. In 2022, the Vermont State Police announced a renewed effort in Brianna's case. re-examining old evidence with new forensic technology. In Maura's case, New Hampshire's cold case unit reopened their files in 2021 under public pressure.
These aren't just cold cases. They're case studies in how easily a disappearance can slip through the cracks and how long it takes to correct course. We're 20 years into Maura's case. Brianna's just damn near that long, and still no arrests, no confirmed sightings, no closure.
So what do we learn by connecting the dots? That geography matters, that gender matters, that public pressure matters, and that tandem driver scenarios, whether in Maura's case or others, are often dismissed not because they lack merit, but because they demand investigative complexity.
And complexity is not an excuse. It's a challenge. And in the next segment, we'll tackle what might be the hardest part, identifying who that tandem driver could have been and why they never came forward. So for every mystery, there are always witnesses. Some speak, some stay silent. Some don't even realize what they saw until years later. In Maura Murray's case, the people along Route 112 that night may hold pieces of a puzzle that we still haven't solved.
And it wasn't an empty road. This wasn't a remote logging trail in the deep woods. It was a snowy Monday night on a state highway. People lived there. People passed through. Someone may have seen a second vehicle or someone in it.
So let's begin with Butch Atwood. He was the first person to speak with Maura after the crash. He was the school bus driver finishing his shift, and he offered to help. She declined, claiming she'd called AAA, and she seemed calm. He returned home and called 911 at 7:43. His timeline gives us the first external timestamp, but Atwood never reported seeing a second vehicle. No lights approaching, no doors slamming, but he also admitted he didn't keep his eyes on the road once he went inside. If someone picked Maura up within minutes, it could have happened unnoticed. And I will say, as an electrician, I have spent when you're running service, you spend hours in your van waiting for, you'll finish one call earlier than you expected, and your customer isn't expecting you for another 30, 45 minutes, right. Whatever the case may be. They call and they're stuck in traffic. They're going to be an hour. You spend countless hours in your van watching YouTube, doing whatever shit. And I'm telling you straight up, sitting in your van doing paperwork or watching YouTube videos or whatever. I mean, the zombie apocalypse could be happening outside your van and you're not going to see it.
Yeah.
Because
you're just zoned
out.
Waiting for the next appointment.
And so, Butch backed up and he was doing his bus paperwork or whatever, but I could see her being able to walk past him or a vehicle past without him seeing it, just because I know how it works. You're sitting there, you're not just sitting there just watching everything that's happening all around.
Well, unless you're freaked out like me, but
right.
Not everybody's like me.
But if you're doing paperwork,
that's true.
You're focused on the paperwork,
That's true.
So
I have been reading in a car and didn't know anybody walk past and look up and see them in front of me and scream. But that's another story.
It happens. It happens. So next we have the Westmans. Faith Westman made the initial 911 call at 7:27, reporting the car off the road. She and her husband, Tim, lived directly across from the crash site. In her call, Faith describes seeing a man in the car smoking a cigarette. That detail has been hotly contested over the years, but like we've said, if it's accurate, it raises immediate questions. If there was a man smoking in Maura's car, it directly contradicts the lone driver narrative. That individual might not have been Maura, probably wasn't, but if it was, she wasn't alone. But the Westmans didn't approach the vehicle. They observed it from their home, and low visibility could have distorted what they saw. Another neighbor, Marcia, reportedly looked out her window after hearing the commotion, but didn't see Maura or anyone else outside. Again, No sighting of a second car, but the clock was ticking. Snowplows were already rolling through, erasing footprints and tire impressions within minutes.
So we have multiple eyes on the crash, but no one definitively saw Maura get into another vehicle. No one identified a second car, and yet the dogs lost her scent within 100 yards, as if she did get into one.
What about passing drivers? Route 112 wasn't exactly packed that night, but it wasn't deserted either. Some accounts suggest a handful of cars passed through between 7:20 and 8. But police didn't immediately canvass those drivers. No roadblocks, no real-time interviews. And that's a critical failure. In cases like this, real-time canvassing is essential. Any passing motorist might have seen a figure by the road, a parked car, headlights, movement, and memories fade fast. Waiting even 24 hours risks losing key visual details. One particularly curious account involves a driver heading east on 112 who noticed police presence near the crash site around 8 o'clock. They claim to have seen no stranded woman, but also no sign of urgency. That aligns with the slow response narrative that we explored earlier. But again, no mention of a second car. The lack of solid witness sightings of a second vehicle is frustrating as hell, but not definitive. If Maura left the scene quickly, say within 5 or 10 minutes of Atwood's departure, a tandem driver could have picked her up and been gone before any of the neighbors looked again. And we've all been in that situation. Well, maybe we haven't all been in it, but I sure as a shit have. When something happens outside your house and you're like kind of being the nosy neighbor, but you're not just sitting there staring the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, if there's like a wreck or something happens out in front of your house, you're like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And then you go back and you keep doing whatever you're doing. And then you go back over and check. And so stuff can happen that you're not going to see because you're not just sitting there watching it all.
There are several Karens that watch the whole damn thing.
Absolutely.
But
with binoculars.
The rest of us just check in once in a while.
Yeah. But the window is razor thin. From 7:27 when Faith called to 7:43 when Butch called, we have 16 minutes. And Maura's last seen calm and alone just before 7:43, and by 7:46, police arrive. So in that narrow band of time, something happened.
But someone else might have seen more. The rumor mill around this case has long speculated about local workers or travelers keeping silent. Some even suggest someone known to the area or known to Maura picked her up, and no one wanted to admit it. That's hard to prove, but it's not impossible.
It's not just about what was seen. It's about what people were willing to say and whether anyone was really asking the right questions back then. Years later, new witnesses have come forward, some claiming to have seen suspicious vehicles, others recalling headlights near the crash that didn't belong to police or to the Saturn, but these claims came too late for forensic follow-up, and none of the sightings were corroborated. Hazy memory, misplaced time, secondhand accounts. We don't build timelines on that, but we also don't just ignore them. If a tandem driver was real, someone on Route 112 saw them, or saw their car, or remembers a moment that seemed too ordinary to report. Those are the ghosts of this investigation, the things we might never recover because the window to ask closed too soon.
And so we ask them now. If you were there that night, if you saw anything, a figure by the road, a second car, a gesture, a movement, please speak up. No memory is too small, and no moment is too ordinary.
Someone was on that road with Maura Murray. We just don't know who. Not yet. When you strip everything away, the speculation, the theories, the media noise, what remains is a single haunting question. If someone picked Maura up that night, why?
It's a chilling question because it takes us from the realm of search and rescue into something much darker. We're not just asking where she went, we're asking why someone else might have wanted her gone.
So let's look at the tandem driver theory through the lens of motive. We're not just exploring who might have picked Maura up, we're asking why. And depending on whether that person was a friend or a stranger, the answers diverge in terrifying ways. If it was a friend, someone Maura knew and trusted, then the motive might have started benignly. Perhaps she was picked up for exactly the reason it appears: a weekend escape, a short-term break, a moment of peace. But something went wrong: a fight, an accident, a betrayal. One scenario we can't ignore is coercion. A friend with a darker side, someone with emotional leverage over Maura. The crash may have left her shaken, worried about police involvement, alcohol, or the legality of leaving the scene. That fear could have made her vulnerable to manipulation. If the friend she met up with wasn't acting with her best interests at heart, it's possible that they used her fear to gain control. A tandem driver who was a stranger presents an entirely different set of possibilities. The most frightening is predation. Someone who happened upon the crash site and saw an opportunity. A young woman alone on a remote road at night. No cell service, no law enforcement presence, and an unlocked window into her vulnerability. Stranger abductions, while rare, often stem from impulse rather than planning. A person with a history of violence or exploitation sees an opportunity and acts. That could mean Maura willingly accepted help, only to find herself in danger moments later. Faith Westman's disputed report of the man smoking adds a disturbing wrinkle because, if accurate, it could indicate that someone reached Maura before law enforcement did. Someone she either knew or didn't know, but either way, someone with intent. The possibility of a criminal posing as a helper isn't new. We've seen it in other cases where victims accept assistance from a seemingly well-meaning individual. The danger isn't always visible at first.
So let's talk scenarios. Let's say Maura called or planned to meet someone. Maybe not through a traceable phone call, maybe through a borrowed phone or face-to-face contact at school. That person picks her up, and for the first few minutes, everything is fine. Then something changes. A fight, a panic, maybe they started drinking, maybe she wanted to go back, maybe he didn't want her to. Or maybe it was someone she never met until that night, a local or a passerby who saw the crash, stopped to offer help, then decided to take advantage. The motive could have been predatory, opportunistic, even pathological.
In the criminal world, opportunity is a powerful motivator. A stranger may have exploited Maura's crash, offering a ride to conceal intent, leveraging her fear of DUI charges or academic consequences. A coercive figure could have pressured Maura, especially if she feared legal or personal fallout. Even someone with no prior criminal record could have acted impulsively and tried to cover it up after things went wrong. And let's not forget her packed items: toiletry, schoolwork, alcohol, the MapQuest directions, all suggesting a weekend getaway, not a plan to vanish. The absence of a suicide note or a goodbye message further reinforces that. Maura was planning to come back, and yet key essentials were missing from her Saturn: her phone, wallet, keys, and likely her backpack. These weren't overlooked. They were taken, which suggests intention, that she either left with someone or was taken by someone who knew to grab those things, or someone who didn't want her found.
Could a friend have become panicked after something accidental happened? That's a hard conversation to have, but it's not unprecedented. In other cases, a friend or partner causes unintentional harm and covers it up out of fear. Fear of police, fear of families, fear of what they've done. In that scenario, Maura's disappearance could have started with trust and ended with tragedy. An argument on a back road, a fall, a bad decision, a cover-up.
Or consider the stranger who never intended to be part of this story. A predator. Someone who saw Maura's vulnerability as an opportunity. He could have been a local, a drifter, even another driver who stopped when no one else was around. He offers her a ride. She says yes, and no one ever sees her again. That scenario is horrifying because it means Maura was taken by someone whose name we don't even know, someone who left no trace, someone who may never surface unless he does it again. There's also the possibility that whoever picked her up didn't mean for Maura to disappear. Maybe there was no harm intended initially, but something happened. An overdose, a medical crisis, or even just a panicked reaction to Maura wanting out of the situation. Cover-ups don't always start with malice. Sometimes they start with fear.
So where does that leave us? It leaves us with the reality that motive is a central piece of this mystery. Understanding why someone would take Maura or help her to disappear means getting into the psychology of the people she knew, the dangers of the road she crashed on, and the fear that might have followed her out of that car.
And maybe the hardest truth is this: we might never know the motive unless we know the person. But what we do know is that Maura did not plan to vanish. We've said it time and time again, but she was packed for a weekend getaway. She brought the things someone brings when they intend to come back. The fact that she didn't makes the motive even more essential to uncovering the truth. Motive drives the tandem driver theory, but what legacy does it leave? The tandem driver theory, someone picking Maura up after her crash, has shifted from a fringe idea to a cornerstone of her case. It's not just about Maura. It's a new lens for missing persons investigations, especially when evidence is thin and early hours are lost.
It challenges the old narrative. Person didn't just wander off. Someone was there, someone drove away, and that assumption, they'll turn up, too often buries the truth.
Early on, Maura's case was trapped in a false dichotomy: accident or runaway. The tandem driver theory broke that open. The scent trail from the Saturn, no footprints, and missing essentials suggest a vehicle exit. That reframes everything: timelines, searches, suspects. It asks, who took her there?
Investigators assumed Maura was alone, irrational, or fleeing. But Faith Westerman's disputed cigarette-smoking man report and Butch Atwood's account of her calm refusal hinted at another presence. Ignoring that let a potential driver slip away.
And the items that she packed, like we've said, point to a getaway, not a disappearance. She planned to reach a destination and then to return. The tandem driver theory fits. She left with someone, willingly or not. The Saturn wasn't treated as a crime scene. No tire track photos, no perimeter, snowplows erasing evidence. That failure erased a second crime scene, fueling the theory's rise.
That echoes in cases like Brianna Maitland's, where a mishandled car scene delayed tandem driver's scrutiny. Rural agencies often wait too long, assuming it's nothing.
Public pressure changed that. Web sleuths, podcasts, and Reddit built timelines pushing for vehicle-focused searches. That's the legacy, a theory that demands we look beyond the crash. This new lens didn't just reshape Maura's case, it set the stage for broader change. This theory didn't just reshape Maura's case, it sparked a movement. Public scrutiny turned a speculative idea into a framework for challenging missing persons investigations.
It's why Maura's story never faded. Citizens, families, and advocates refused to let runaway define her. They demanded answers and changed how we investigate.
In 2004, adult disappearances like Maura's rarely triggered urgency without clear foul play. Her case, college student, crash, no visible threat, was dismissed as a walkaway. But the tandem driver theory, backed by the scent loss, missing essentials, and witness accounts, forced a rethink.
That rethink came from the public. Web sleuths, that's a hard word, web sleuths, bloggers, and podcasters dissected police logs, mapped routes, and questioned narratives. By 2010, Maura's case was a true crime touchstone, driving scrutiny of rural disappearances.
That pressure led to reforms. New Hampshire integrated canine units earlier, secured crash scenes faster, and escalated suspicious cases to state agencies sooner after 2004. The 2021 New Hampshire Cold Case Unit reopening of Maura's case was a direct result of public advocacy.
Families took note. Maura's family, especially Fred Murray, challenged the runaway label, demanding witness interviews and footage reviews. That set a blueprint for others, teaching advocates to question timelines and assumptions.
The theory's legacy isn't flawless. Overzealous sleuths sometimes overapply it, muddying cases, but it shifted how we see offenders, not just strangers, but locals, co-workers, or helpers. It taught that a car isn't just a crash site, it's a potential launch point.
That shift matters. It's why Maura's case, like Brianna Maitland's, pushes us to ask, was someone there and did they drive away?
And the tandem driver legacy isn't about solving Maura's case. It's about ensuring no case is dismissed too soon. It's a call to preserve scenes, broaden scopes, and keep asking who was behind the wheel. That legacy raises unanswered questions about Maura's fate and what we're still not seeing. As we move deeper into the mystery of Maura Murray's disappearance, we find ourselves face to face with a painful truth. Some questions don't fade with time. They grow louder. Theories evolve. Technology advances. New eyes take a second look. But the most pressing questions, they've been with us from the beginning.
It starts with the basics. Where did Maura go? Who picked her up, if anyone? And why didn't the investigation chase that possibility down from day one?
Maura's Saturn was found locked and off the road on Route 112. Her belongings were left behind, her schoolwork, toiletries, the MapQuest directions, a few bottles of alcohol, but the items she likely considered essential, like her phone, wallet, keys, and backpack, were gone. This wasn't someone abandoning their life. This is someone who expected to continue a trip. And yet, like we've said, the response was passive. No perimeter, no tire tracks, no forensic, nothing. The indifference left space for crucial leads to vanish right along with Maura. 100 yards east of the crash, the dogs lost her scent. That detail alone should have triggered a wide-scale alert, but there was no bolo issued for a second car. No immediate canvass of the area for drivers who passed by. No effort to collect dash cam footage or highway toll data. Even back in 2004, there were ways to trace movement. No one tried.
That brings us back to this tandem driver theory. If Maura was picked up, was it someone she trusted or someone she didn't know at all? And either way, why wasn't that possibility pursued with the seriousness it demanded? Let's look at what wasn't done.
There were no door-to-door canvasses beyond the most immediate homes. Witnesses weren't re-interviewed until much, much later, if at all. No gas stations along Route 112 were checked for surveillance footage. No local mechanics or tow services were contacted in the early days to ask about vehicle sightings. And when tips came in, some credible, others not, they were often dismissed without follow-up. A second vehicle seen near the scene? Not documented. A report of someone matching Maura's description walking along the road? Unconfirmed. Leads faded without pressure.
There's still no definitive answers about the phone. The last known use was sometime before the crash. Then silence. Was it powered off, destroyed, or taken by someone who didn't want it traced?
Another silence haunts this case. The status of the backpack. We know it was missing, but has it ever been located? Did it contain a second phone, a burner device, or something she didn't want found? We can speculate, but we can't investigate because law enforcement didn't.
And what about the local rumors? The cigarette smoking man, the mysterious voices, the uninvestigated outbuildings. They weren't just ignored, they were quietly erased. No public follow-up, no logs showing door knocks, no statements confirming searches. If a local picked Maura up under a pretense of helping her, that person had every advantage: familiarity with the area, a vehicle to disappear into, and time, because the system gave it to them.
Even now, one of the loudest unanswered questions is this: why did authorities treat this as a runaway case for so long? Why no coordinated search of the woods within the first hours? Why weren't nearby routes closed? Why wasn't a second vehicle part of the narrative from the beginning? It wasn't until civilians got involved, family members, advocates, journalists, that those questions started getting asked. And even then, the answers never came.
The most glaring silence of all may be the list of people never interviewed. Locals who lived just off Route 112, drivers with known DUIs, individuals with prior offenses who had access to a truck or SUV that night. If Maura was taken by someone living nearby, how many opportunities were missed to connect the dots?
And how many records remain sealed? How many documents have been withheld from public view under the claim of an ongoing investigation? After 2 decades, what justification is left for silence? The tandem driver theory isn't just about a second car. It's about the failure to look for one.
These questions aren't theoretical. They're investigational. They're the cracks that formed when the case was fresh, and they've only widened over time. So we're left asking, if someone helped Maura disappear, who was it? And why haven't we found them?
Why wasn't a reverse 911 issued to ask residents if they saw or heard anything? Why wasn't there a full search of all nearby barns, garages, or hunting cabins within 48 hours? Why did law enforcement publicly downplay the case before the investigation had even begun? Because that's what lingers, that silence, that slowness, that void of action.
But here's the part that keeps us going. Every case is only cold until someone reignites it. And the questions we're asking now, they're the same ones Maura's family asked for over 20 years.
These questions aren't just part of the narrative. They are the narrative. They're what we must demand answers to, because until we do, we leave the same gaps open in the next case and the one after that. So we've walked a long and winding road in this episode, through packed bags and silent cell phones, through police missteps, public confusion, and theories that have evolved over time. But above all, we've followed the one path that matters, the road Maura never got to finish.
We don't pretend to have all the answers, but we do know this. Maura Murray didn't vanish into thin air. Someone knows what happened that night in the White Mountains. Someone drove past her. Maybe stopped. Maybe offered her help. Maybe didn't let her say no.
Whether it was a friend or a stranger, whether it was someone she trusted or someone she had every reason not to, we believe she didn't leave that scene alone, and she didn't leave of her own free will.
And that belief carries weight because it demands accountability. It demands a second look at the decisions made in those first crucial hours. It demands better from every agency tasked with protecting the missing. And it demands people like you, listeners who care enough to keep pushing for answers.
If you want to be part of that push, visit darkdialogue.com. There you'll find our full case files, links to every episode, and ways to get involved in the search for the truth.
You can even adopt a victim. Take on the research, help spread awareness, and become part of the investigative effort yourself. Just go to darkdialogue.com/adopt a victim to get started.
And if you're ready to take it a step further, join the Dark Dialogue Collective. We're building a team of advocates, analysts, and search volunteers. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement.
You'll find all the links on our site, or support the mission through Patreon or Coffee. And if you've got a tip, feedback, or just want to help us tell these stories better, email us at info@darkdialogue.com.
Because this isn't just about Maura. It's about everyone still wanting to be found.
So keep digging, keep questioning, keep demanding more.
And above all, keep the dialogue alive.